So if you do need to leave for whatever reason, just know that we will send a follow-up email by the end of the week with the recording so that you can listen back to this if you do need to leave, or if you heard a lot of great tips that you want to listen back to, share it with your team. It's all recorded for you. So feel free to ask questions during this Pendorama. We want to make this as interactive as possible. This is a regular Zoom. It's not a Zoom webinar, so you can come off audio or mute and ask any sort of questions that you may have to the speakers. So just get comfortable and we'll go ahead and get started. All right. So our speaker lineup today, we have Tiffany kicking us off here from Pendo. She's one of our senior product managers, and we'll be giving an update on an Adopt specific project that she's working on. So she'll give you a little bit more context of what that specifically means. And then Ashley and Katrina from Aperture will be giving their presentation, followed by John from UserTesting. So I'm really excited about our speaker lineup here. And let's go ahead and get started. So Tiffany, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can present from here.
Perfect. Thank you, Erin. I will go ahead and share. Can you confirm that you can see my screen? Okay, yes. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me. As Erin mentioned, my name is Tiffany Kitchen. I am a senior product manager here at Pendo, working on Adopt. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you today about a new capability that we just launched last month called Journeys. Taking a step back, Adopt is focused on powering the digital workplace experience. A few things to keep in mind about who we're focused on building for on the Adopt side of the house. So we are focused on senior operations leaders at enterprise companies who need to improve employees' experiences with software and drive productivity and process adoption. So these roles are operational in nature. They may sit in different departments, but the key thing to know is that the people in these roles are more focused on the process than the product. So let's take a look at a specific example. Prior to building the capability that we will kind of walk through today, we were doing discovery calls, product discovery calls with some of our prospective customers. And we heard one of our prospects say, we want to understand how visitors are completing business processes. And they said, it's not just about completing it, but did they complete it the way that we would have anticipated? Did they complete it following the optimal path? And if not, what triggered that detour? And we, as an operational team, make the experience more efficient and more effective for our workforce. And so after synthesizing feedback like this from our prospects and our customers, we iterated toward a solution called Journeys. So what is Journeys? It's a new feature in Pendo Adopt, and it allows our customers to focus on how employees complete a process. It highlights the step-by-step pages or features, previously tagged pages and features that employees took to go from the starting point to the ending point, as well as how long it takes to reach your desired outcome. And the why behind Journeys is it gives you instant reports on which completion paths are most common, for example, and which are most efficient. And as a result, our customers will have actionable data to help them make data-driven process decisions. So for example, should I redesign the process itself? Should I do an additional training, right? What's the best way to support my workforce? Journeys gives you those insights. It also helps our customers save time by building fewer guides on the most impactful steps in the process. So for example, if you hear qualitative feedback about a specific problem area at one step in the process, you can leverage Journeys to first validate that that problem exists at scale, but then also verify what steps do employees really need guides. If there's a 20-step process, do you need 20 guides on all of those steps? or maybe 2 or 3 guides on the most important steps where people experience friction. Those are the types of insights you can get from journeys. So let's take a quick look at Pendo Adopt, just to give you an understanding of what this capability looks like. Just a brief kind of drive-by. And so if I'm currently looking at the Adopt UI, and if I click on the Workflows product area, and I click on a specific workflow, I'll just move over to a different tab, I'm able to see process analytics off the bat. So this is a workflow that I had already set up. Let's imagine that I'm looking at a process that requires employees to navigate from LinkedIn Sales Navigator to Salesforce, right? So this is a cross-app process. Today with workflows, without journeys, just workflows, I'm able to understand what percentage of my workforce, what percentage of people went from start to end, what percentage of people started it and did not finish it, and what percentage did not start at all. But let's say my job is to optimize this process and make it better. Although I can see completion stats on the workflows page today, I can see progress over time, I can see how long it took to complete. I can even create a segment to focus on sending a guide only to specific employees based on their completion status. But I don't currently have visibility into how people completed it, right? I don't have visibility into where people may have been getting stuck. And so that is where Journeys comes into play. It's a sub feature that is embedded within Adopt workflows. And if I click on the Journeys tab in the top left corner of the screen, by default, I can view top journeys. I can understand, hey, what completion path did most employees follow to go from the starting point of my workflow to the ending point of my workflow, right? How long on average did employees take to flow between each of these steps? Perhaps I only expected it to take, this says 25 seconds, but let's imagine that this said 1 hour, right? Let's imagine that I'm viewing longer completion paths than what I would expect. I can investigate further by creating a guide, by following up, creating segments, etc. And so there's just a few key things I'll call out about Journeys before we wrap up. The first is that Journeys looks at the many different sequences that employees took to go from start to end. It's about what many people did. We know there are many different ways to complete a lot of different processes, right? Journeys gives you that visibility. The second piece is that Journeys allow you to be selective about which pages or features are included in this visual. By default, we will just show you all of the steps in the start and ending app. But let's say you wanted additional granularity, right? Let's say you expected employees to view specific help documentation in Confluence, for example. You can add Confluence to your journey, select relevant pages and features where the help documentation is located, if it's tagged, and you would be able to see that cross-application interaction. So that's the second piece. The last piece before we move on back to the slides and wrap up is that Journeys allows you to specify required steps in your process by indicating a must include step. All this means is that if there are steps that you really care about, you can specify those as must include to filter down your journeys and only focus on what's most important to you. And so if I shift gears back over to my slides, I'll give you just a brief overview of what's coming next. As we continue gathering feedback and iterating on that first version of Journeys that we just showcased, we are actually revisiting our workflow homepage and introducing additional enhancements to help highlight the metrics that are most important to our customers. And so we have 2 new things coming soon. One is the ability to set a baseline for your workflow and compare your workflow analytics over time. So for example, let's say I'm actively trying to improve or optimize a process, right? After I've done my manual interventions, after I've placed my guides, after I've done my trainings, I can revisit my workflow, set a baseline, and understand how much faster how much more effective is my workforce today after I've done my manual interventions to make the process better. Separately, we know that time to complete is a super important metric that our customers are focused on reducing. And so we're bringing that to the forefront of workflows in a separate chart on the workflows homepage. So that's just a sneak peek into some of the exciting new capabilities that are coming, with the overall intent being to measure and report on the value of Adopt clearly and effortlessly. So if you or your team have any questions about workflows or journeys, feel free to reach out. But that concludes the update that I had on my side.
Thanks so much, Tiffany. I know some of you may be thinking, this is a different use case than you normally would be utilizing Pendo, but this is a great opportunity to have Pendo on your internal tools to help with those processes and make sure that everyone is more efficient. So if you do want to bring that to your company, or there's somebody that would be interested in learning more about those features and how you could integrate that with your internal systems, please just let us know, or let your customer success manager know that that's something that you all would be interested in. But Tiffany, that was a great update. Those are, the workflow is kind of like the Susan made a note about it, but that it's kind of like funnels on the other side of the house. So thank you. All right, so I'm going to pass this over now to Katrina and Ashley to present on their Pendo use case.
Hey, yes. Can you see my screen, everybody?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Ashley Willard from Aperture, and I will be presenting a little bit of a case study on how we Pendo. If you happened to come last week to the in-person Pendorama in Raleigh, then this will be a little bit of a rerun for you. But I do have Katrina with me to do some of the talking this time. So, so we're going to just tell you a little bit about first. There we go, about what Aperture is and what we do. And then we'll get into the problem that we were trying to solve and how we went about it. So first, about Aperture. So we're a fintech company. We make banking software for financial institutions. So our products run the gamut of the things that a small or medium-sized community bank or credit union would need in order to have a digital banking operation. Their web online banking, their mobile app, lots of analytics, digital account opening, all those sorts of things, and lots of, back office admin tools that the people at the banks are using in order to control their customers' experience. And side note, if you see the top right image here, this is us repackaging Pendo for our customers. So this is another use case for Pendo, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. So let's see. So we're a mix of B2B and B2C, right? So our customers are the financial institutions, but their customers are their end users, the people using our banking software. So we're making things for both of those groups. And to those end users, their customers, we're an invisible party. So they don't really know that we're even in the mix. They're just going to their bank and doing their banking and assuming probably that their bank is behind the curtain when actually that's us. So again, we do a lot of tools for those people at the banks, and then we also create the digital banking software for their customers. And that's where we're going to be talking about this particular problem, is that end user using digital banking. And one more note is that we are a small team, and this is a company that has, through acquisitions, inherited and grown over the years. And so I'm sure this is a familiar thing to many of you, right? But we've inherited a lot of kind of what I call Frankenstein UI, UX, things that maybe Band-Aids have been added on over the years. And so there's lots of outdated or just sort of things that haven't been tended to in a while. So we would love to do a lot of work and clean all of those things up quickly, but you have to choose your battles. So this is where this came in to try to identify something that we thought was a big problem and that we thought maybe we could do something to fix. So what we sought to evaluate. Our online banking help feature is thumbs down. So, much like many of the digital tools you're used to, we have a help link on all of our pages, and then that takes users to what I call a VCR manual. It's very dense, and you'll see it in a moment. I'm going to play a video real quick, but it's very dense, very wordy, hard to navigate. It's unsearchable. It's easy to hide by mistake. What I mean by that is, you'll see again in a second, it comes up in a window overlaying the page. And so as soon as you click anywhere else, it goes behind the browser, and then all of a sudden you think it's gone. It's hard to measure with Pendo. We can't actually tag it the way we can tag most things. It's contextualized, but it doesn't need to be. So what I mean is, it will take you directly to the help articles for whatever page you might be on at that moment. But a lot of times people aren't looking for help with that page. They're looking for something and they can't find it. So they're not on the place where they need to be. But the big thing that was driving this internally is that it is a huge effort for us to maintain. It is a ton of work for our tech writers. It requires developer involvement. And I don't know about you guys, but for us, developers are always hard to get time with, and dev resources are hard to come by. And so we wanted to look at what we could do to make it easier on us and better for the end customers. So I'm going to show you. So to get to it, you click on this little question mark that again appears throughout our web online banking solution at the corner of every page. And hopefully this video will work. Let's see. Okay. And so once you click on it, this is what you see. Video's working? Good. It didn't work in person last week, so I had to try to describe it verbally. But I think you can understand looking at this that it's just so much dense information, lots of links, no search capability. Once you click into something, there's no back path. So if you think maybe the thing you're looking for might be under this link and you click it and then you realize it's not, you're stuck. You've got to just close out of it and get back into it, if you even realize you can do that. And you know what I mean? Just a tricky experience. So I'm going to take a look at the chat because I see some. I like the turducken experience. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Katrina. Actually, hold on. Let me read my last slide first. So our problem statement before we got into actually doing the research was that it takes a lot of work for commercialization, which is our tech writing team, dev and product to maintain help in its current form. And we don't believe it's worth that extra effort. It's overly verbose, not particularly user-friendly for someone trying to find a quick answer to a question. So that was our theory. And let's see, or our hypothesis, I should say, and let's see what we found out. So now I'll hand it over to Katrina, who I give credit to for doing most of the work here on this research, along with Kelly from my team, who's also listening in now. So I'll stop talking because they're the ones that did the bulk of this.
Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, so as Ashley said, we were really interested to kind of figure out even a good starting place for our help feature. And because of that, we didn't want to exclude any types of data. So we actually decided to do two different versions of a guide. Our A version was, it asked the question after the user had clicked on the help experience and then navigated back to their original banking page, it popped up and said, how would you rate the experience 1 to 5? And then if they answered that question, they got question number 2, which was any other feedback? How can we improve our help feature? The other version that we offered people was, again, after clicking the help feature and navigating back, were you able to find the answer you were looking for? Yes, no. So we ran this for just under 30 days, I think actually 29 days, and we got lots of information. So the first thing that we learned was the 1 to 5 didn't actually give us really great data. Just the number and the ranking, we got like really polarized results. You can see we got 91 saying horrible, but 96 saying great. But overall, only 300 people actually answered this survey, which might sound like a lot, but when you compare it to the 1,300 people that we had answer the first question of our B survey, you can see the vast difference in people's willingness to interact with the guide. But also the answer is so much more clear with B, that no, people could not find what they were looking for in our help documentation. And so that was super, super great to get that information. After this, we were able to, or Kelly mostly was able to look at all of the answers that people filled in to that second step of the question and categorize it based on what they said, because people did not just stop at our help feature. They gave us all kinds of feedback, which was super valuable, slightly unexpected, but really, really wonderful that we now have this great resource for all kinds of feedback. So you can see on the right, the numbers of comments that related to certain categories. We had lots about statements and documents, payments and transfers, etc.
I think the takeaway from this too that I love is like, we wrote any other feedback, and then in the second sentence is how can we improve our help feature? And I bet you nobody was paying attention based on what we got, right? They weren't really talking about our help feature. They were just like, oh yeah, we got feedback for you, and they went for it. So got a lot more than we bargained for, but really good stuff.
Yeah. So the next slide shows just an example of some of those comments. Can't find statements easily, kind of frustrating, make it searchable. As Ashley mentioned, we have no search or back button. So like we got that comment a lot. It needs a search function. But one that was really interesting that Ashley found was it would help to have a search bar and also a chat feature to help with questions so I don't have to call. And a chat feature is something we actually offer our FIs. And so this was a really good nod at how we can connect some of the feedback that we're getting to our sales team so that they can make sure they're reaching out to these FIs to say like, hey, we're hearing from some of your customers that a chat feature would really be helpful. So that was an awesome way that we used this guide to help even like outside of our design and product team.
Yeah, because that chat feature that we offer is not like a built-in, not everybody gets it. It's an upsell, right? So this is an opportunity for sales to come in and tell that client, hey, we have evidence that one of your customers wants this thing. Maybe you should think about it.
Yeah. So I think the next slide. Okay, yeah. So after we looked at some of that feedback, one huge question that we wanted to answer was, is the contextualization evident? Are people like navigating to pages and then looking for help? And actually what we found was that no, people either weren't even realizing that the help was contextualized, or they would navigate to a page and then go back to the overview page to then click on help instead of clicking on help in the page that they were in where they were experiencing the problem or issue occurring, which answered a huge question for us about, is it worth the dev lift to have this highly, highly contextualized help that people weren't even realizing was contextualized, or it wasn't intuitive to them that it was contextualized. So they were, even if they were realizing it was contextualized, they were going back to the overview page before clicking on help. And so that leads us to our proposed solution. Ashley, do you want to cover the proposed solution?
Sure. Yes. So this is still work in progress. But as you can see here, where we've landed thus far is to break this into its own standalone page, make it a help and FAQs type of page, clearly add a giant search bar right at the top of the page, knowing that that is going to be first and foremost the most valuable thing for most people and their needs is to be able to search for that thing they're looking for, like documents or how to log out or whatever it might be. We're simplifying the navigation and persisting it. So again, before where you saw how you'd click on something and then go to a whole new screen with a whole new navigation, none of that, right? The same navigation will always be there. And so you can't really just get lost in things. And then over time, our tech writers will be coming in and doing a lot of revision to just what the content is in here. For example, I think it's kind of silly for us to have a general FAQ about what are the icons next to balances and other items. Those are just the little like eye icon that you see all over every digital product that you use. So I just think that's excessive to have, you know, how to use the internet as part of our kind of help and FAQs documentation, right? That's up to the tech writing team. They can leave it if they want to, but I think there's plenty of opportunities to really trim this down and make it a lot easier and more digestible. So next steps, we're going to do some usability testing on this design. And we also want to look into if there's a third party we could use to power this rather than building it ourselves from the ground up. So that then the tech writers would have an easier way to own the control of it. You know, we don't have to get Deb involved every time that we need to change some documentation. So that is it for us. So I'm happy to answer any
Amazing.
questions.
Yeah, there looks like there's one question here that someone was asking, have you thought about using the resource center to put any of this in there?
We haven't gotten that far to start to look at what those tools are going to be. And I'm not sure that my team is going to be the one doing that. I think because our tech writing team is already, you know, I think they're using help docs today. So I think they're going to be responsible for figuring out if and what we want to use as a platform. Or again, we could build it ourselves, but we'll see how that goes.
Nice.
Yes, yeah, and I'm reading along. Sorry, I'm reading along with the
Okay.
from Help Docs, Caitlin. The comments here. And Ross is right. It is tricky. Okay, it is tricky to use certain things. So all of our customers or all of our different institutions have a different skinning of our product, right? So what it looks like for one bank, it looks real different for another bank. So we have to use something. If we were to use a third party, it has to sort of adopt those styles. It has to pick those up. So, you know, in 2023, those things are usually possible and probably doable, but just haven't dug into that yet enough to know what we're going to do next there.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm also like really surprised that you got a lower response rate through the 1 through 5 guide versus the yes or no. I don't know why I'd be more to interact with the 1 through 5. So that was interesting. And then had you ever run an NPS before survey to your customers? Because I just love that they used it for all feedback.
Yeah, my team, so our CSM team runs those. I don't know how regularly, but they sort of own that metric and doing that, you know, those checks.
Yeah, nice.
But and one thing I didn't mention, but that does also, going along with what we were saying before, you know, makes it a little extra complicated is that, again, because we're an invisible party, we are using guides very sparingly. We had to get the okay internally and then from our clients to even put a poll in the UI for their end users because it looks like it's coming from them. And so we won't be using Pendo a ton, as much as we'd love to, to gather feedback from end users. But when it's something as valuable as this that really affects a lot of people, we'll go to that extra effort to get the okay from all the necessary parties.
Yes, that makes sense. Well, awesome. Well, what a great presentation. Thank you so much, Ashley and Katrina, for taking the time to get that all set up. And John, you're up next.
Unmute. You would think after 3 years of this, we would be over the, you're on mute, John. We can't hear you. Let me share my screen real quick. Can you see you can, correct? Awesome. So I'm just a little about me. This is a different, maybe it's not a different, I don't know, perspective. I work in customer success. I'm not in products. I'm not in engineering. A lot of the somewhat normal experiences with Pendo, but I've been a user of Pendo for a very, very long time. And I'm going to give a perspective on how we are learning from a lot of the communication styles and a lot of the training and enablement tools that Pendo offers, not just to communicate with our key accounts. So it's our strategic, the big guys, right? We're talking the Amazons and the Googles and the Nikes that have maybe 10,000 users within a single account, like with one named CSM. How do you manage these huge behemoths intelligently and with resources that you have at your fingertips? So we first, a little bit about, if you guys don't know who we are, like I said, I work for UserTesting. We are a UX UI research platform. We basically, our whole kind of gist is we empower our customers to understand what it's like to be their customers. So we've got a ton of data and a ton of software that allows kind of like a research room, right? So you put something up on a screen and you ask somebody's feedback on what do you think of A/B testing, preference testing, all kinds of, we won't go too deep into research methodology, but basically we want to know how the things that people are putting out there are being experienced by their customers, and if the changes are net positive or net negative. So a lot of what I do is focused on adoption. We're a consumption model, meaning you have to use it for us to make money. So a lot of our customer success managers spend a lot of time just asking a lot of questions, spending a lot of time on discovery, understanding what it means when they click a button. And one of the things that I love about Pendo in the customer success world is that we actually get some really incredible dashboards of very core and key usage down to the user. And I'm gonna give an example of something that we actually just rolled out. As we're kind of working through like what events look like, how do you get in front of people and how do you get people to show up to places? We were really thinking about communication strategy. We were thinking about how do we measure success, because this is a thing that I am like so neurotic about, is everything that we do needs to be measured and tied back to value, not just from our customer, but I mean, look, it's lean times. The economy's weird right now. Who knows what money looks like tomorrow, right? So we got to make sure that there's value, and that the things that we're doing and the dollars that we're spending equal a net benefit for an organization that we're supporting. So I'm going to kind of talk through a bit of what we call our key accounts event strategy, the problem. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but people don't open emails. We have 5 of our key accounts, and I've named them all. I can't go into specifics, obviously, but I think we have like maybe a 1 or a 2% open rate when it comes to like general comms, when it comes to email, and that infers a lot about what we need to focus on. But it's really hard to say, hey, we've got this great digital or in-person event coming up. We'd love for you to show up. We recently ran a large-scale hybrid event up in Seattle with some key accounts. And this is our 2nd year running it. Last year, it was very manual. It was, hey, I would love to see you there. Here's one email to one person. We brought, I don't know, maybe 150 people into this event. But it was very difficult. The lessons that we learned from there is, how do you get POCs on calls? We can't get EBRs. We can't communicate effectively at large scales in a way that is, it's going to equal the value that we need, right? The secondary thing here that we found is that we really struggle to capture success criteria for these complex accounts. It's so different. Everybody's got such different ideas of what success is. And in my world, we measure success criteria, meaning a customer says, hey, look, I'm going to give you X number of dollars. And in order for me to keep giving you this amount of money, I need to make sure that Y happens. When you're dealing with these big, large strategic accounts that has maybe 10,000, 15,000 users, how do you capture that in a broad sense while focusing in on the individual? Kind of the secondary problem, we have one named resource. So how does one person manage all of that? We also have a pretty low acceptance of our pre-recorded trainings within our key and strategic accounts. I mean, something like 2 to 3% acceptance rate within net new users. I've got some charts that can kind of go into a little bit more detail on that. But we found that most of our customers in these big echelons wanted one person to talk them and walk them through these demos. And that just wasn't scalable, right? So enter Pendo. The way that I'm going to talk about this from a communication standpoint, but then I'm also going to go into the metrics and the tracking of, because as we know, guides and light boxes and resource centers are incredible when it comes to communicating in mass. But it's what you do with the data and how people interact with those and how it changes behavior that really starts to drive like interest and value, especially from my standpoint. So we utilize a lot of tools. We kind of cast a wide net with our very specific accounts. We empowered our CSMs to build light boxes and to build guides for these specific events, targeting specific accounts with specific actions. Obviously, outside of Pendo, there's the direct interactions, phone calls and LinkedIn ads and stuff like that. After the targeting, we're going to jump into tracking, which is after the event. What happens? How do you prove that this $10,000 or $20,000 that you spent and these training sessions and these content-heavy focused sessions equal your expected outcome, which in our world is usage. Then the last thing is, how do we replicate that? So this is a beta. This is something that we are taking from our managed at scale team, where we have kind of our, our product-led growth, where people are coming in and under 50K, I think is kind of the model. They don't have a named CSM. They don't have named resources. They're just kind of following our resource centers and our guides, and a lot of heavy lifting from Pendo, to be honest. We have this theory that the same methods are going to add even more value into our enterprise and strategic accounts. So, again, I'm still wrapping my head around how we do it at UserTesting. We just went through an acquisition and our data is a little funky. It's in a bunch of different places. So we're doing a lot of CSV uploads, but that's okay. I love it. So we basically give our CSMs the CSV of their account IDs that are tagged in Pendo, and they build segments off of those experiences. We then segment by seat type and communicate differently, whether it's an admin saying somebody who manages 10 to 15 people, hey, invite your team, versus an IC, hey, I would love to see you here, type of messaging that's different. Viewers, that means they don't have a seat. They're just kind of like passive. This is like a, hey, reach out to your admin. We got something cool coming up, kind of passive approach. An example of our segments, key account name, whatever that is, all users, admins, and non-admin users. I got really funky with my block out, so you can't actually see the name of the account, but I think we can all infer who we're talking about here. So we go back into kind of post-event segments. One of the things that I love about Pendo, and what blows my mind about Pendo is that it is it's almost like a map for you to find value in how your customers are using your tool. And as much as we're used to kind of a static Tableau page or a static, report that CSMs can kind of read and find health scores, Pendo really allows you to see not only the actions that you're doing, but the direct effect. And one of the things that I love to do is right after these events, we see a massive increase in just weekly visitors. This gives us kind of a jumping off point to say, hey, here's our validating effect, event. What are we going to do from here, right? So then we segment the folks that by user ID within Pendo. We build export, do a match of emails and IDs and upload another CSV file of specific users that attended this event. And my whole goal is to prove to my boss that folks that come to this by the money that we're spending are going to use us more and spend more money, right? So we do benchmarking, right? So we have 3 main KPIs that we're tracking within Pendo. So we consider it results consumed, study ordered, and observation created. This is kind of jargony for what we do within user testing, but that's really, hey, I showed somebody, hey, I asked somebody a question, and then I read the report on what this person said, right? So those are kind of the metrics that we're using. We then segment them by date, 60 days over 60 days. So previous 60 days before launch of events, post 60 days launch of event, was there an increase? And this is all tying into some of our PES that we have, stickiness and adoption and some of those wonderful things that I won't go into too deep today. But we also, if you look at this report here, you see that observations created, this is kind of a viewer, somebody who isn't a paid seat taking a look at things, actually decreased. But the results consumed, which is somebody read a report, doubled over the course of these kind of time periods. Same thing with study ordered. So this ties directly into consumption, meaning last month they did 10,000, this month they do 20,000. That's an incredible outcome for us to be able to not just see as a user base, but also within now 2 months. You know, some of this is a little bit older data, but within a few months of this, we're actually able to kind of tell that story and allow that story to unfold a little bit more. This is data from last year, but this is what we're planning on showing. So we did all this manually. So this is kind of what it validated us to invest in Pendo for customer success, because of the amount of time that it took for somebody to crunch all of these numbers and put them all together. We saw 120% increase in KPIs 6 months after the event for the users that attended. Now, that was a much smaller pool last year. We actually tripled that pool this year just in the way that we communicated to people, the way that we attracted people. We saw almost 30 opportunities created for net new users that equaled almost 330K in opportunity value last year alone. The numbers that we have this year are almost 4 times. So not only are we casting with a wider net, but we're also casting with a broader value set, right? So we're bringing in more revenue. I need to take a drink. Sometimes I just talk. I say so many words and I forget to take more oxygen in. So this year, we're actually segmenting users post-event that are engaging with our guides, and we're actually giving them different content. So whether it's somebody said resource center in the last one, this is like my favorite thing. I love this so much. I want to make sure there's some time for some questions at the end. So I think I want to jump a little bit forward and I'll answer that a little bit. But into the replication of like, not just how does this work for this one event, but I've got 40 CSMs on my team that I want to empower to do the same thing for their books of business. And Pendo is going to say, hey, that's 40 more seats. That's great. But when you tie it down to the value that we as CSMs are able to extrapolate from the stories that we're telling from our actual users through, one example is, I guess this isn't on a deck, but one of the problems that we found is we've got some like premier services. I think everybody does that in SaaS where you pay extra and you get a different experience. We have this thing called Power Sessions, which is very focused on research. And a lot of our customers were using, they get a link and they would schedule themselves for a 30-minute meeting with one of our researchers. And it's supposed to be about methodology. It's not supposed to be, hey, what does this button do? What we actually found is that a good portion of our customers that pay for these premier sessions are coming to these tools and these resources in a way saying, hey, I want to know what this button does. So we're like, well, shoot, how do we stem the tide with 10,000 people? I can't communicate with all these people, so we're actually locking the premier resources behind completion of specific coursework that's tied into UTU. So it's kind of the must complete, or, I forget what the verbiage is within the rules. But the segment that gets this resource, the resource center, has to complete certain steps. And this, we're still in the process of rolling this out, so I don't have the data to kind of prove on this. But we found that if somebody hears from us, like, this is why you go to this session, they don't go to the session for the wrong reason, right? So it's really basic stuff, but it's about correcting behavior in mass to large sections of people, based on the experiences that you're getting from your different teams and from your feedback. I think was at the end of that's the last slide that I have. The last thing that we're in the process of doing on top of kind of, empowering our CSMs is, we're building out approval flows, guidance design templates for individual CSMs that just can kind of drag and drop content or names, specific things that they need into a standardized set of lightboxes or guides. We have some best practices that we're building from our manage and scale team that, again, has been working wonderfully with our smaller accounts. That is just a no-brainer for us to bring into our enterprise and key accounts. I'm most excited to be able to have these stories from 2,500 customers within our customer base, to be able to tell a story in a way that we've never been able to do, simply because I'm able to get a NPS report from Sam, and he gives us a 1, and I can actually go into his user journey and look at the map of where he spends his time. I think I don't have that. I had this example because there's this case that I presented this to my team where, in January, a guy gave us a 1, and he gave us a lot of life words in the feedback, if you will. And we had an interaction. So we had a CSM reach out and be like, man, I would love to train you. And we got him into one of our lunch and learns. And we had a 386% increase in usage from this one individual user, based on the fact that we had access to an NPS score. That is one thing, it's just a number, right? That doesn't actually do much other than an indicator for us to go in and say, man, this guy's spending all of his time on our help center, which is funny, Ashley, to use your use case, and not actually going into the tool in the right way that we would think he would be. So let's get him on a call, and we showed him, and his last NPS score came in as a 10, which is an incredible opportunity. And that's one example of how we're, as CSMs, able to empower and encourage our customers through just looking at what they click on in the tool, right? This is just a no-brainer. I wish every CSM thought this way. So that's my words. I'd love to answer some questions and take another drink of water.
Thanks so much, John. I don't know if you've looked at the chat at all, but people are really loving this story in this use case. So that's amazing. And as when we were talking earlier, prepping for this Pendorama, I was telling you that I was going to steal a lot of these things myself, running events at Pendo myself. So thank you so much for all of that. Please let us know if you have any questions for John specifically. I just was curious, does UserTesting do any sort of integration to make your CSM's life easier so that you don't have to send a CSV to upload for your customers?
So we did, and then we didn't, and then we will again, I guess is the best way I can explain it. So we're in the middle of this. We acquired our main competitor, which is just a weird experience in general. We're literally in the middle of this merging event, and we're moving from our data table and lakes over to their data lake. So it will happen. We have a pretty robust plan. We're integrating with Tatango. We're integrating with some other tools that Pendo's actually going to be a part of our health score from a CS standpoint. And the PES that we have is one of my favorite things to really look into. And that's a whole nother conversation from a CS standpoint to understand stickiness and adoption and everything and growth. But yes, I just don't know what the timing of that is. It will happen. I just need somebody to write in a couple more checks.
That makes sense. And then I'm just curious, when you have the benchmarking, is that something that you tailor per customer, or is that something more broadly all CSMs are kind of using the same benchmark features to just kind of show?
Yeah, so I would say there's a shift in customer success right now, and something that I'm advocating for very strongly in my organization is to empower our CSMs to identify their own benchmarks. I think it's important to teach people how to fish. We have some best practices, and I want to keep it pretty broad, especially with the tool that Pendo is. It allows you to draw your own box and then work within or without it, right? So we keep our KPIs standard. Those are kind of the 3 things that we track, and we understand that SMB, mid-market, enterprise, B2B, B2C may be different when it comes to how often, whether they're on waterfall or agile or all these different things. There's so many different use cases that if we just cast with as wide a net as possible and empower our team with the tools that they have to solve the problems and answer the questions that they come to the table with, then we're going to have a much better outcome. than saying, here's your standard, only do it this way.
Nice. Well, I can't wait for all of you to get a very specific Lightbox guide from the marketing events team when you use a feature in Pendo to get you all to Pandemonium. So thank you so much for your event or your presentation. And then I have a few wrap-up slides, so let me get to that. All righty. So other things, the first thing I want to touch on is our product analytics certification course. I'm not sure if any of you have seen this, but we've gotten a lot of really great response from this so far. This is kind of our second training course that we are hosting, and it's the product analytics certification. And there's different modules. It is free for a limited time, so please don't sit on that. Use the code ILOVEDATA. I will share out a link to the certification in the follow-up email as well. So please take advantage of this course. We're super excited about that. And then we always skip Pendorama when there is a customer forum. So next month is our customer forum, which is our quarterly forum that is led by Todd. He gives a very big update on where Pendo is at, where are we going, any sort of new product features that might be launching. It's a really great time for you to even ask questions to Todd directly about maybe things that you're looking for. So make sure that you register. I'll include the registration link in that as well. And let's see. Oh, and Pandemonium. So as I was mentioning, Pandemonium is October 17th through 19th. It's going to be in Raleigh again. It's at the Duke Energy Center if you came last year. So it's the exact same venue. We're super excited. There's going to be 30+ breakout sessions, a ton of great content, ways to network with one another, just really get great ideas from each other. And of course, we'll make sure that it's fun. So be sure to join us. Right now, we're at super early bird pricing, which is $8.99. So make sure that you're taking advantage of that best price. Today is also the last day to submit to speak. So if you've been sitting on a topic that you want to be submitting to speak, make sure that you submit that session today. Today is the last day. But we're super excited that we're going to plan to announce the agenda at the end of April. So stay tuned for that if that's what you're waiting for before getting a ticket. And then webinars, we have a Pendo for Mobile group demo webinar. So if that is something that you're interested in, please join us on Tuesday, March 28th at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern. And then we have a Data Explorer specific webinar as well. That's going to be on April 11th. So if those are two kind of Pendo features that you're wanting to learn more about, please join us. And then you may have heard me a couple of times talk about different things that you can integrate with Pendo, Pendo for Mobile, Pendo feedback. If there's just other things that you need help and want to utilize Pendo more, please contact your CSM. We have a lot of them on this call that they're more than happy to provide more details of what they include. So please make sure that you're utilizing our great CSM team. And then lastly, our Pendo user groups. We are rocking and rolling with all of our user groups. So we're super excited that we're back in person, and we have, if you're located in any of these cities, we want to see you. This is a really great way to network with other local Pendo users. This is most likely going to be like the second time that we've met up, and the first user groups at each of these cities has been really great, and seeing a lot of you all just kind of like learn from each other, and then just in a pretty laid back setting. And then, and refer a friend. So if you do have somebody that you know could really utilize Pendo, we would love for you to provide us with their contact information. You can use this QR code, and you could potentially get a free pass to Pandemonium as well. So make sure that you're utilizing our Refer a Friend program. So that's it. So thank you so much. Thank you for our speakers, Tiffany, John, Katrina, and Ashley. I really appreciate you taking the time to build out a presentation and spending the time with us this afternoon. So thank you so much. And I will be sending out the recording by the end of the week. Thanks all.